What's up YouTube, Zero here, and today I have an amazing Meowscarada and Celebi EX deck in Pokemon TCG Pocket. In this video, I'll go over the deck build, which you can see on the left hand side of the screen. I'll talk about each of these cards individually. I'll also talk about why they pair very well together and why this deck is an EX card destroyer in Pokemon TCG Pocket. Before I get into it, I do want to say if you do enjoy this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more Pokemon content. I do a bunch of other video games, so feel free to check those out as well. Without further ado, let's talk about this grass deck with Meowscarada and Celebi EX. Meowscarada is all the rage right now. For those of you who do not know what Meowscarada does, it's absolutely epic and can completely tear through EX Pokemon. Now it does evolve twice. You're going to have the entire Meowscarada line in here with Sprigatito and Floragato, but Meowscarada is very unique. For 2 energy, it has Fighting Claws, which deals 60 damage. So on the surface, that's not great for 2 energy. However, if your opponent's active Pokemon is a Pokemon EX, this attack does 70 more damage. So if you have Meowscarada and you're facing an EX Pokemon, you can deal 130 damage to that Pokemon that you just saw on the screen. Meowscarada can completely tear through opponents, especially ones that are EX. Again, 60 damage for 2 energy isn't great, it's okay. But if you're facing EX Pokemon, that's where Meowscarada can really do its damage. Now, of course, you're going to have 2 Meowscaradas, and you're going to have its evolution line, Floragato, which is 2 energy for slash at 40 damage, and Sprigatito, which is 1 energy for cry for help. This is actually a really good move. It's not going to deal damage to your opponent, but what it does is it puts 1 random leaf Pokemon from your deck into your hand. This is fantastic because it can help you get to the Pokemon you need quicker. Whether you need that evolution into your Floragato, whether you need a Meowscarada, whether you want your Celebi EX, Sprigatito can pull them out from your deck and put them into your hand so you can get those evolutions quicker. So Sprigatito itself may not be dealing a ton of damage, but it's going to allow you to get those evolutions, get the Pokemon out that you need onto the battlefield quickly, so you can get your strategy implemented before your opponent. You saw in the first video, in this video clips, the first clip in this video string, in which I was able to get my Meowscarada out and powered up before my opponent was able to power up their Palkia EX. That was extremely important in me being able to defeat my opponent, and that's going to be extremely important when you utilize a deck like this, especially Meowscarada, so you can deal that 130 damage to your opponent's EX Pokemon. Now I have Celebi EX. Those who do not know what Celebi EX does, it has Powerful Bloom. For 1 leaf energy and 1 colorless energy, it deals 50 damage for each heads, and you get a coin flip for every energy equipped on the Pokemon. So every energy attached, you flip a coin. For every heads, you deal 50 damage. So you have the potential to deal a ton of damage, depending upon how many energy are attached to your Celebi EX. Celebi EX is great to have on the bench because after you power up your Meowscarada, which is only 2 energy, you can just keep equipping energy on your Celebi so it can be that late game sweeper. That's what I love about this combination. It's a pretty basic combination in just Meowscarada and Celebi, but Meowscarada is going to be dealing 130 damage to EX Pokemon, and then your Celebi is just going to be your late game sweeper. Hopefully you have 4, 5, or maybe even 6 energy attached to your Celebi if you really need it, and hopefully you're going to be getting a decent amount of heads. Let's assume that you're going to be flipping for 50% heads, which is just averages with the law of large numbers. So on average, if you have 4 energy on your Celebi, you're going to be hitting for 100 damage. So that's pretty good damage, especially at the end of the game when hopefully a lot of your opponent's Pokemon are injured. So now let's talk about all of the trainer cards and additive cards that are helpful in a deck with Meowscarada and Celebi EX. First, and this is a must, you have to have red with your Meowscarada. It doesn't matter what Meowscarada deck you are going to be running, I am highly recommending you utilize red. And what red does is during this turn, the turn that you utilize red, attacks used by your Pokemon do plus 20 damage to your opponent's active Pokemon EX. So it has to be an EX Pokemon, but if it is and already your Meowscarada is powered up to 130, when you're attacking an EX Pokemon, if you also have red, you're going to be doing 150 damage. This is going to be going through a lot of EX Pokemon in the game. Darkrai has 140 HP. Articuno has 140 HP. Palkia has 150 HP. A lot of EX Pokemon have between 130 and 150 HP. So having red plus Meowscarada is going to allow you to KO a lot of EX Pokemon. So red is a must with Meowscarada. Some of the basic cards that I'm going to talk about briefly. Professor's Research, of course, you draw 2 cards so you can get to the cards you need quicker. You can pull out those reds, you can pull out the Pokemon that you need in your hand so you can deal the damage that you want to deal. So having Professor's Research is important. Pokeball, same concept. It's going to allow you to draw the Pokemon you need quicker. Pokeball puts a random basic Pokemon from your deck into your hand. So you can use Sprigatito to pull some Pokemon. You can use Pokeball to pull some Pokemon. So you can get to the Pokemon you need as quickly as possible. Erica is pretty obvious in a lot of grass type decks. It heals 50 damage from one of your grass type Pokemon. So this is going to allow your Meowscarada and your Celebi EX to survive a lot longer, especially when taking hits early on in the game. You're not going to have to worry as much if you take a 30 hit from a Hitmonchan because you're going to have Erica. And on top of that, you can see I also have 2 potions. Because I have 2 potions, because I have 2 Ericas, I'm not going to have to worry as much about taking some of those hits, especially early on. I want my Meowscarada to survive as long as possible so I can take on the EX Pokemon that my opponent has and I can take them out. Last but most certainly not least is going to be Sabrina. If you've watched my videos previously, I've always talked about having Cyrus so your opponent cannot hide weakened Pokemon on the bench. And that's true that Cyrus is great at making sure your opponent cannot hide weakened Pokemon. Sabrina is going to be better in this deck. And I'm going to tell you why Sabrina is going to be better in this deck. First, let's talk about what Sabrina does. So Sabrina, switch out your opponent's active Pokemon to the bench. And your opponent chooses the new active Pokemon. In a Meowscarada deck, almost every opponent at this point in the game knows what Meowscarada does. It deals 60 damage plus that 70 against any EX Pokemon. Sabrina is going to be great to draw out those EX Pokemon. Your opponent knows that your Meowscarada is going to be completely killing EX Pokemon. That's obvious. So they're going to hide their EX Pokemon on the bench for as long as possible until they know they can take out your Meowscarada. Sabrina isn't going to allow your opponent to do this. Hopefully you get into a situation where you can utilize Sabrina to force your opponent to put their EX Pokemon in the active slot. This is going to allow you to deal 130 damage to those Pokemon. Most likely, unless your opponent started with an EX Pokemon in the active slot, those EX Pokemon are going to stay on the bench, and they're going to stay there until you lose your Meowscarada, or your opponent finds a way to forcing your Meowscarada to the bench, maybe with their own Sabrina. So what you want to do is you want to utilize Sabrina to your advantage to draw out those EX Pokemon into the active slot. That's where Cyrus isn't going to help. If you don't have any damage on your opponent's EX Pokemon, you're not going to be able to utilize Cyrus to its full effect. Sabrina is great because it can draw out those EX Pokemon, so your opponent can't just hide them on the bench. That's why Sabrina is going to be more important when powered up or paired up in this deck with Meowscarada rather than Cyrus. Cyrus is a great card and does well in many decks. Sabrina is just better in this deck. Sabrina is going to pair up very well with Meowscarada because it can pull out those EX Pokemon. Then Meowscarada can deal 130 damage to that EX Pokemon. Hopefully you're lucky enough to where that EX Pokemon isn't powered up that much, but even if it is, 130 damage is absolutely amazing. This is going to be because even if you lose your Meowscarada, you only lose 1 point for losing your Meowscarada. It's not the end of the world. But you're going to have your Celebi powered up on the bench. Maybe you'll have a second Meowscarada powered up on the bench. So pulling out that EX Pokemon where you can deal 130 damage, even if you're not able to finish it off, is going to be crucial to turning the tide of battle. So that's why I prefer Sabrina in this spot over Cyrus. So this is the deck combination, and it does really work amazing together. Meowscarada is going to be the Pokemon you want in that active slot first. For only 2 energy, it can deal 130 damage to your opponent's best Pokemon, and that is absolutely huge, especially turning the tide of battle. You can either utilize Sabrina to draw out those EX Pokemon, or you can utilize Red if they do have an EX Pokemon in the active slot to deal 150 damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. Erica and Potion are going to allow your Meowscarada and your Celebi to survive even longer in battle. 1 Erica plus 2 Potion can deal up to 90 HP in 1 turn, which is absolutely awesome. Your Professor's Research and Pokeball, of course, are going to be there just so you can get to the cards you need quicker by pulling more from your deck. Let me know in the comments section if you utilize this combination. Is there another Pokemon you prefer to pair with Meowscarada, or are you utilizing Celebi EX like I am? Really, Meowscarada has been the star of the show here in this deck. I don't utilize Celebi EX a lot, mainly because opponents are afraid to put their EX Pokemon in that active slot when Meowscarada is there. So I just utilize Sabrina to draw out those EX Pokemon, and my opponents aren't prepared for that. But Celebi is great to be there as that late game sweeper when needed. I've been doing really well with this deck and I absolutely love playing with it. Let me know in the comments section what y'all think, if you've used something similar, and what cards you switch out for other cards. Let me know in the comments section. Well, until next time, peace.